Hello everyone, and welcome back to another Anime Villainous how-to video. As always, I'm Chaos in the Sky, and today I'll be showing you how to play as Tetsuo Shima from Akira in Anime Villainous. Tetsuo is a young, hot-headed student who develops incredible psychic abilities after being arrested by the government. Confused and angered by his new powers, which cause him severe pain at times, Tetsuo seeks to learn more about what has happened to him. As a result, he becomes obsessed with finding the one called Akira, another powerful esper that the government determines Tetsuo is close to in power. Having an incredible amount of latent potential, Tetsuo proves to be among the strongest of all psychics, outclassing the other espers that the government has on hand. In his search for Akira, Tetsuo destroys anything in his way, whether it be civilians, the government, or his old friends. This leads to Tetsuo's abilities growing more and more, until in the end he loses all control of himself. Tetsuo is a powerful psychic that seeks to become even stronger, eventually losing control and causing his power to run rampant. In Anime Villainous, this means that Tetsuo's objective is to play his only form card, Out of Control. To be able to play Out of Control, however, Tetsuo first has to remove the 3 control tokens that start on his portrait. There's a lot to get into for how Tetsuo goes about completing his objective, so let's first start by looking at Tetsuo's villain ability, his territory layout, and his villain strength. As mentioned, Tetsuo has 3 control tokens that he needs to remove for his objective to be possible. The way he removes them is through his villain ability. Tetsuo's ability is that if you end your turn with no cards in your hand, you then get to remove 1 control token from Tetsuo. Since there are 3 control tokens, you'll have to end 3 separate turns with no cards in hand to remove them all. This may seem like a very easy objective until you get a good look at Tetsuo's territory. Tetsuo has no discard card actions, meaning the only way to get cards out of his hand is by playing them or by other card abilities. As we know in Villainous, you must always draw up to 4 cards at the end of your turn, unless some card or ability states otherwise. Because of that, you'll have to find creative ways to empty out your hand in a single turn to be able to remove control tokens. Something else you'll notice about Tetsuo's territory is that he has no vanquish actions either. Tetsuo's only means of defeating heroes is through clashing, which luckily he has a strong 3 strength to make use of. There are some heroes with more than 3 strength he'll have to face, but Tetsuo has ways to help with that. With Tetsuo's unique situation covered, let's move on to his villain deck, and what cards will help you both deal with heroes and empty out your hand. First, we'll look at Out of Control, the card Tetsuo must play to win the game. It's a 4-cost form, and as mentioned, you can only play it if Tetsuo has no control tokens. It changes Tetsuo's strength to 5, stronger than any hero in his Fate deck, and also makes his ability that when you would clash with a hero, you may clash with each hero at their location instead. This means that once you enter Showdown with Out of Control, if there are heroes stacked up in your territory, you can defeat a slew of them all at once. It takes a lot of work for Tetsuo to reach Showdown, and Out of Control makes it where Tetsuo can quickly clean up any remaining heroes and finish his game if he managed to get all of his control tokens gone. Next, we'll look at the 3 allies Tetsuo has in his deck: Kaori, Lady Miyako, and Cultist. As mentioned, Tetsuo has no vanquish actions in his territory, and that means none of these allies can be used to defeat heroes. However, their abilities are all invaluable to Tetsuo, and that's what makes them worthwhile. First is Kaori, Tetsuo's most expensive ally, and for good reason. Whenever you remove a control token from Tetsuo, Kaori allows you to choose a card from your deck or discard pile and put it into your hand. This allows Tetsuo to get whatever card he thinks will be most useful for him in hand for his coming turns. This is especially useful when removing Tetsuo's final control token, as it allows you to put Out of Control into your hand right when you're ready to play it. Kaori is helpful no matter how many control tokens Tetsuo has removed thus far, but she's at her best when the last one is taken away. After Kaori is Lady Miyako, a 2-cost ally that also helps Tetsuo with playing cards he wants. With Lady Miyako in play, Tetsuo can use an activate action to choose a cultist from his deck or discard pile, pay their cost of 1, and then play them to his territory. There are 3 cultists in Tetsuo's deck, and he'll want them in play as quickly as he can to help with his objective. Even better is that Lady Miyako lets Tetsuo pull them back from the discard to use them again. The reason Lady Miyako playing cultists is so beneficial is thanks to their ability, which is that whenever you would draw cards, for any reason, if Tetsuo is at cultist's location, you can discard the cultist to draw 1 less card. This ability works for any type of drawing, whether it's caused by a fate card, one of Tetsuo's own villain cards, or just the required drawing of cards at the end of your turn. Because of this, cultists are an invaluable part of Tetsuo's journey to discarding his entire hand. There are a multitude of ways to use the cultist's ability, and you'll have to make smart use of all of them if you want to do well as Tetsuo. With Tetsuo's allies covered, next we'll look at 3 of his effect cards: Excruciating Power, Awakening Potential, and Unhinged Laughter. Excruciating Power is Tetsuo's main source of gaining extra power, which he'll want a lot of given how many cards he needs to play or discard in a single turn. With Excruciating Power, Tetsuo can gain up to 2 power, and then draw that many cards. This can work very well when you already have to draw cards at the end of your turn, as you can use Excruciating Power to gain power for cards you would have drawn regardless. You can also play it and choose to gain 0 power, which means you'll draw no cards, letting you play a card from your hand for no cost. For Tetsuo, that can be the difference between having enough power to remove a control token or not. Following Excruciating Power, we have Awakening Potential, one of Tetsuo's best options for emptying out his hand. When played, you place Awakening Potential below your deck. Then, during your next turn, you perform up to 1 activate or play a card action, and then discard Awakening Potential. Thanks to this, you can play more cards to get them out of your hand, or get an activate you'd otherwise be lacking. But keep in mind that even if you choose not to use the activate or play a card on your following turn, you still have to discard Awakening Potential. Make sure that when you play it, you're well prepared to take full advantage of its ability. Now we have Unhinged Laughter, a card that pairs incredibly well with Cultists. Unhinged Laughter lets you discard a card from your hand, and then draw a card to replace it. If you have a Cultist at your location when doing this, you can discard the Cultist to avoid drawing the replacement card, a very worthwhile combo. On top of that, since Tetsuo can't discard to cycle through his deck faster, Unhinged Laughter is a good way to get to other cards quickly. When you have a card in your hand you don't want to play anytime soon, such as Out of Control for instance, Unhinged Laughter lets you discard it and move on to cards that are ideally more immediately useful. The next cards we're going to look at are 2 of Tetsuo's items, Organ Jar and Debris. Organ Jar is perhaps one of the most important cards in Tetsuo's deck, as they are the most straightforward way of emptying out your hand. Organ Jars cost 1 power to play, and they can be activated by paying 2 power. Once activated, you get to discard any number of Organ Jars from your territory. Then, you discard that many cards from your hand. There are 4 copies of Organ Jar in Tetsuo's deck, meaning you can have anywhere from 1 Organ Jar to 4 in your territory at a time. It only costs the single payment of 2 power to activate and discard several of them, meaning they can let you empty out your hand effectively with a single activate action. This pairs especially well with Awakening Potential, which can let you perform an activate action even if there isn't one at your location. While there are plenty of ways for Tetsuo to go about emptying his hand, Organ Jars are often the most consistent option. Debris is another activatable item that doesn't help with emptying Tetsuo's hand, but instead helps him deal with heroes. As we know, Tetsuo can only defeat heroes via clashing, but what if a hero has more strength than Tetsuo can handle? One of his answers to this issue is Debris. All heroes at Debris' location get -1 strength, making them easier for Tetsuo to deal with. However, when you defeat a hero at Debris' location, you then have to discard Debris. You can also activate Debris to move it to any location, in case a hero ends up somewhere else that you need it for, rather than having to use move item actions. Our next 2 cards are also items, but these items are ones that attach to Tetsuo, Pills and Prosthesis. Pills are an activatable item that when activated lets you choose a card from your discard pile, pay its cost, and play it. However, in exchange, you must then discard Pills. Since Tetsuo has a hard time cycling his deck around, being able to replay cards from his discard is a vital piece in his game plan. Prosthesis, meanwhile, is another one of Tetsuo's options for dealing with heroes that exceed his base strength of 3. With Prosthesis, you can choose to once per turn draw 2 cards, and upon doing so, Tetsuo then gets +1 strength until the end of your turn. While it's troublesome for Tetsuo to add more cards into his hand, being able to easily gain an extra strength to do away with troublesome heroes is often worth it. Speaking of troublesome heroes, Tetsuo has 3 other effect cards in his deck that help him deal with heroes. Those cards are Shockwave, Akira Reborn, and Telekinesis. Shockwave is Tetsuo's 3rd and final option for defeating heroes with a higher strength value than his own. When played, it lets you choose a hero to lose 1 strength. Not all that much different from Debris, but with how Tetsuo's deck works, it's good to have multiple options. Akira Reborn, meanwhile, is potentially one of Tetsuo's most important cards. It allows Tetsuo to clash with a hero so long as that hero is at a location with an ally. Given that Tetsuo has no Vanquish actions, this card is his only way to defeat heroes outside of his actual clash phase. To be able to better deal with heroes, Akira Reborn is a necessity for Tetsuo to keep his territory open and give him more options. Although if you find yourself swarmed with heroes and clashing with them all isn't yet an option, Telekinesis can help give you better control over your territory. When played, Telekinesis lets you move any number of heroes to adjacent locations. You can use this to put several heroes at one location, making them easy pickings for when you've played Out of Control, or just to keep them off of a location you want opened up. Telekinesis also works well to move a hero to your location after you've already taken all your actions, so you can then clash with them to end your turn. It's expensive to play, but it's an invaluable tool since it's the only option Tetsuo has for hero movement. Something else important to notice about these 3 effect cards is that they all say "you may" in their card text. Because of this verbiage, you can play these effects even if there are no heroes for Tetsuo to target. This prevents Tetsuo from getting soft-locked if his hand is a combination of just these 4 cards and your opponent doesn't play a hero on you. So even though playing them when there are no heroes around gives no benefit aside from getting to then draw a different card, sometimes that's what Tetsuo has to do to keep progressing towards his objective. The final card of Tetsuo's deck is his one and only scheme, Rebellion. Rebellion triggers when the targeted player gains 3 or more power, and it allows Tetsuo to discard any number of cards from his hand, then draw that many cards. This is a major boon for Tetsuo, since he has such a hard time with cycling through his deck. It lets you ditch any cards that aren't immediately useful and dig through your deck to find important cards like Organ Jar or your allies. It also works well with cultists, just like all other cards that make you draw from your deck. Now that we've finished going through Tetsuo's villain deck, it's time for his fate deck. The first thing we're going to look at is one of the most destructive fate cards that Tetsuo has to account for, the SOL. When your opponent plays SOL, they choose a location in Tetsuo's territory and discard all items, allies, and heroes from that location. This includes items attached to Tetsuo if his mover is at the selected location. Thanks to the existence of SOL, Tetsuo cannot afford to stack up his allies and items in one singular location. You have to prepare for when it inevitably shows up in a fate action. One positive of SOL, however, is that it also affects heroes, meaning you can use heroes in your territory as a sort of safety net. Placing important allies like Kaori or your items like Organ Jar where heroes are will force your opponents to make a choice on if clearing out the hero for you is worth discarding Tetsuo's other cards. So let's get into the many heroes that Tetsuo will face throughout his game. There are 9 heroes in Tetsuo's Fate deck, 3 of them with 4 strength, 3 of them with 3 strength, and 3 of them with 2 strength. We'll look at the 4 strength heroes first, as they are often the most troublesome for Tetsuo to handle. Our 4 strength heroes are Kei, Kaneda, and Colonel Shikishima. Being at 4 strength, Tetsuo cannot clash with them given his base strength of 3. To defeat these heroes, Tetsuo will either need to have already played out of control, or make use of either Prosthesis, Shockwave, or Debris. Of course, this makes them troublesome to deal with, but perhaps even worse is their abilities. Kei's ability is that when she's played, the one playing her may find Akira and put it on top of Tetsuo's Fate deck. Akira is Tetsuo's challenge, which we'll talk about later. Not only is Kei an annoying hero to deal with given her strength, but she also ensures that the next time Tetsuo gets fated, he won't enjoy it. After Kei is Kaneda, who gives all other heroes +1 strength. Since Tetsuo's base strength is 3, this ability makes the other 4 strength heroes even more troublesome to deal with, while also putting the 3 strength heroes up into that 4 strength range that Tetsuo needs a little help to deal with. Although, if Tetsuo has managed to play out of control, Kaneda's ability doesn't take any hero to a strength higher than Tetsuo's new base strength of 5. Our last 4 strength hero is Colonel Shikishima, whose ability turns off Tetsuo's own villain ability. While he's in play, Tetsuo will be unable to remove any control tokens. Because of this, Colonel Shikishima will force Tetsuo to drop any other plans he has, and instead focus on defeating him so he can return to his objective. Shikishima also turns off Tetsuo's out of control ability, making it where Tetsuo cannot clash with multiple heroes at his location during Showdown. Not as immediately troublesome as being unable to remove control tokens, but still a major speed bump in Tetsuo clearing out heroes to finish his Showdown phase. With the 4 strength heroes covered, we'll move on to the 3 strength heroes, the 3 Espers. All of them have an ability that has to do with Tetsuo's effects, making it harder for him to remove control tokens or deal with heroes. First is Kyoko, who increases the cost of Tetsuo's effects by 1 power. Tetsuo has to play a lot of cards, and he needs a lot of power to do so. Because of that, Kyoko costing him an extra power per effect can be the difference maker in getting to remove a control token, or not. Second is Masaru, who Tetsuo cannot target with effects. Notice how it specifically singles out Tetsuo using effects, which means Masaru can still be discarded by SOL. This ability means that Tetsuo cannot use Shockwave, Akira Reborn, or Telekinesis to handle Masaru. He'll have to go to Masaru's location and clash with him the old-fashioned way. Third, we have Takashi, whose ability makes it where the amount of cards that Tetsuo draws from effects is increased by 1. This means whenever Tetsuo uses Excruciating Power or Unhinged Laughter, he'll draw an extra card on top of what he was already going to draw. Even if you play Excruciating Power for 0 and would usually draw 0 cards, Takashi makes it where you draw 1. Finally, we have the 2 strength heroes, Dr. Onishi, Yamagata, and Kaisuke. The good Doctor and Yamagata have very similar abilities. Dr. Onishi's ability is that when he is played, the one playing him may choose an item at his location and put it into Tetsuo's hand. Since items that are attached to villains are considered at the villain mover's location, this means Dr. Onishi can be played to Tetsuo's villain mover to return an item like pills or prosthesis to his hand as well. Yamagata's ability is the exact same thing, except instead of an item, when your opponent plays Yamagata, they get to choose an ally at his location and put them into Tetsuo's hand. This hurts especially so if it's Kaori or Lady Miyako, since they're rather expensive allies. Much like how Tetsuo needs to worry about positioning allies and items because of SOL potentially discarding them, you also need to take into account where you're putting your items and allies because of Yamagata and Dr. Onishi. Wherever you play your more important or expensive items and allies is where they're likely to be played by an opponent. The last hero in Tetsuo's Fate deck is Kaisuke, who when played lets the one playing him find and play Motorcycle. Motorcycle is an item that attaches to a hero, so when Kaisuke is played, he can either attach Motorcycle to himself or to any other hero that happens to be in play at the time. So let's look at both Motorcycle and the last effect in Tetsuo's Fate deck, Hallucinations. As mentioned, Motorcycle is an item that attaches to a hero when played. When that hero would be defeated, Motorcycle is instead discarded, and that hero is moved to an adjacent location. When a hero is moved by Motorcycle, remember that Tetsuo is the one that chooses which adjacent location that hero then moves to. This can be a major headache for Tetsuo if Motorcycle ends up on one of his more annoying heroes. Even worse is that Motorcycle can be played by your opponent simply drawing it from the Fate deck, or from Kaisuke's ability, giving it, theoretically, 2 opportunities to be played in one Fate deck shuffle. Hallucinations, meanwhile, is as simple as it gets. When played, Tetsuo must draw 2 cards. As with all other times Tetsuo must draw cards, Tetsuo can mitigate this by discarding cultists from his location if there are any there. Hallucinations is also affected by Takashi's ability, since Takashi specifies Tetsuo draws more from effects, not just villain effects. That means if Takashi is in play, Hallucinations makes Tetsuo draw 3 cards rather than just 2. At long last, we have the namesake of the movie itself, Tetsuo's challenge, Akira. When Akira is in play, Tetsuo draws up to 5 cards in his hand rather than the usual 4. As always, this can be mitigated by discarding cultists, but you can only discard so many cultists so often. Having 1 extra card in his hand on most every turn is a major detriment for Tetsuo, and will often slow him down considerably. To discard Akira, Tetsuo must remove a control token. This means Akira isn't even a detriment to Tetsuo once he reaches Showdown, at which point he wouldn't be able to remove Akira anyway. This challenge will essentially just require Tetsuo to do some extra work to progress his objective, but then allow him to discard the challenge as soon as he makes that progress. We've now covered all you need to know to play as Tetsuo, a hot-headed, powerful psychic seeking both answers and more power. Playing as Tetsuo will require you to set up various combinations that let you empty out your hand as you strive to become truly out of control. If you have any questions relating to Tetsuo, feel free to leave a comment and I'll do my best to answer you. Also, check out the description for the playlist to see all the other anime villainous how-to videos if there's another character you want to learn about. Thank you for watching this video, and I hope to see you again for more anime villainous videos in the future. Until then, farewell.